At this time, we'd like to start with questions.
I'm very critical of both the Clinton and the Obama administration's preoccupation with market solutions to housing. I really don't think it's served us well at all. But I wanted to focus on one of the flagrant violations, if I seem to recall and just check, that the Bush administration did. The Clinton administration, with their commitment to market, at least had this kind of a racial test where they would put two people, two different races with the identical credentials. And I think that was a law that was still on the books, and the Bush administration, if I recall, just didn't enforce it. Is that a correct memory of the circumstance?
Well, I think there's two pieces to your question. One has to deal with HUD paired testing. So what they would do to test for housing discrimination is to send, say there's an advertisement in the paper for an apartment. They would send people who are identical in terms of their income and education, the only difference being their race or ethnicity, and they'd go and try to rent the apartment. And so they had done these studies about every 10 years, I think. And it showed that about 25% of the time, depending on where you are and who you are, but about 25% of the time, some form of discrimination existed. Normally, they just say, oh, it's not for rent anymore, or something like that.
So that wasn't done for mortgages?
No, the way we try to get at discrimination in mortgages is through what's called the Home Mortgage Disclosure Act data, or HMDA data. So that's what I've used in trying. The law in the 70s required that depository banks provide data which is released every year, and you can get it online for free. And so people have used this to test for discrimination, especially with respect to denial rates. And so the research shows pretty much that there is a, in the economist's viewpoint, an unexplained difference in denial rates, i.e. discrimination. The HMDA data needs to be updated, so we don't have information like credit score, for example, in the HMDA data. But so that's the purpose of that, yeah.
I'm just wondering if you can, so it sounds like what the news today was how all the banks, or yesterday, are freezing their mortgage foreclosures going on. And it sounds like a mess that's not easily untangled, just in terms of the solution for that. A while back, there was stories about how the Obama administration was having difficulty with its programs aimed at helping keeping people in their homes and getting the banks. It sounded like the banks were basically reluctant to negotiate down the principal or other ways that people could stay into it. Is there a grand deal that can be made here where the banks can get off of this, or is the pressure put on to get them off the hook if they start renegotiating some of that stuff with people? Or do you see any hope in that?
I don't really have an answer for that one. I do know that the figures I've seen, if you want to refinance everybody, which was done in the Depression, the tab for refinancing people who are underwater and keeping them in their homes is somewhere between $50 and $60 billion. I know that's a lot of money, but there could be some really important long-term benefits. You keep people in their housing, so they're not becoming homeless. Their kids aren't having to move schools, live with relatives, do whatever. You're protecting that property by not having it abandoned and being vandalized. And it's also that things like deregulation and stuff also help cause the problem in the first place. So I know that sounds like a lot of money, but the debate is kind of shocking. It's like, well, maybe we should just do nothing. We'll just do nothing, and we'll let values go down and down and down, and we'll let people lose their houses, and when they get to the bottom, somehow everything will be okay. Well, gee, you know, we told everybody they should buy houses. And the whole white middle class is built on home ownership. So are we just now just going to shrug our shoulders and say, well, you know, we kind of misguided you a little bit here. Tough luck. And what's going to be the economic cost of that? Right? And I'm not even leaving out the human cost. So, you know, maybe $50 or $60 billion is cheap compared to some expenditures we could talk about in our budget that you know, and maybe in the long run, if we keep people in their homes, we stabilize the housing market, then that's going to seem like a small price tag. But you're going to get all these counter arguments. Oh, some of those people don't deserve to have the house. They don't deserve this, that, and the other thing. But remember, when someone loses their house on your block, it hurts you too. Because the American homeowner has lost trillions of dollars of equity in this country. And so, you know, there's a number, it's going to be an interesting debate. That's one thing that's out there. There's really kind of a policy paralysis on what to do about it, even before the robo-signing scandal, which may actually end up stopping foreclosures in a totally unanticipated way. Yeah.
Hi, my name's Laura. I'm a master's student in urban planning, and I really appreciate how you highlighted the structural issues and the very broad scope of foreclosures. But I was wondering, as from a planner's perspective, things that we could do locally to kind of mitigate or prevent these types of things, like whether it be financial literacy among our community or things like that. So if you could speak to how to kind of address these on the local level.
Well, the banks have actually funded financial literacy programs, but the sales methods that were employed in this stuff is far beyond the average person's way to deal with it. And even I mean, I'm a housing studies professor. When I close on a house, I don't know what half the papers mean. So education is important, but it's not a substitute for reasonable regulation of the mortgage industry. There's no way that you can educate people out of the problem, because if you, and I have some of the scripts that these people use to sell mortgages. A lot of people actually come from car dealerships into mortgage brokering. The guys, I hope no one here is the car salesman, but you know, when you get to the end of the sales pitch and then you decided you want this car, which is your big mistake, right? Because they know that. These guys, they're professionals. So then they try to sell you pinstriping, or the people that do the paperwork. That's the same people that work in the mortgage industry. People really want a house. They have a strong desire for it. It makes them vulnerable. But it's not just want, it's need. So many of the people I interview, they're like, I got 2 kids here. I got to have a roof over their heads. So yes, it's important to have literacy. I'm not saying it's not. But it's not a substitute for regulation. And actually, a regulated system worked pretty good for 40 years. The 30-year fixed rate amortized mortgage worked good. The main